Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna. I saw a friend yesterday that I haven't seen in a while. Probably a year. And you know how if you're watching the hands of a clock, it doesn't look like they're moving if you're just sitting there watching them. But if you go away and then you come back after a while, oh, the hands move. Well, seeing my friend, I could see the changes that were taking place. Hey, Hare Krishna. Krishna. I saw an old friend yesterday, and I saw the kinds of changes my friend's gone through. They like to talk, and they have a lot to say. And mostly, like about a year ago, they're chanting Hare Krishna, and they're very enthusiastic about Krishna. But most of their talk was about them. And how Hare Krishna, and how what happened to them, and in that way trying to say something about Krishna by talking about themselves. They have a lot of mystic potency. They can zoom in on someone and captivate them. They have like a hypnotic thing they do. It's a psychic ability they have. They're very powerful. But when I saw them yesterday, it was very encouraging. They still have that same, I can zoom in on you and hold you captive. Listen to the sound of my voice. But they were talking about Mahabharata. And they were talking about devotional service. And they've been fasting, just water, to try and control a craving they have for things like Reese's peanut butter cups. They're trying to control that. And they don't want to do that. They want to control the tongue. And it was very encouraging to see them and hear them. That same gift of gab, that same mystic power zoom in on you, but they're pouring out the teachings and the philosophy and the pastimes. And it's all about Krishna as pure devotees, and talking about the songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And so it's wonderful to see. It's actually wonderful to see this transformation take place. It's really, really wonderful. And they're just beginning. The more they get a taste for this, the deeper they're going to go with it. And they don't have much of an education, and honestly they can hardly read, because the kinds of things they did in life to support themselves didn't require knowing how to read very much. So they're remarkable like that. Really wonderful. They even look a little like Gorkishore Das Babaji when you see this, you know. Hare Krishna. Krishna Chaitanya. So there was that. It was very good. And my neighbors, they own like, I don't know how many acres, 50 or 100 acres next door to my little place. And they're selling them off 5 acres at a time. But they live there. So you know they're going to, whoever they sell to, they're going to have to live with. So you know they're going to sell to responsible people, right? Right. Hare Krishna. I hope so. He's disabled. He can't do much physically. And they're an older couple, and she does a lot of the yard work and riding the lawnmower. And she's also kind of old, you know, she's a little frail. She's not like, you know, she's probably about my age, but her health doesn't look all that great. So she's really kind. She does, in front of where my fence is, along the road, there's a big strip of grass that, you know, when people visit, they can park on it. It's a big, long strip. And she mows that. You know, she does hers, and then she just keeps going, and she does mine too, at least part of it, which is very nice. It's very nice of her to do that. She always does it. And then I take care of where there's a culvert, a storm drain, where the weeds all go up around it, and I take care of that with the weed eater. So we've got this thing going, and every now and then we'll stop, you know, neighbors and talk a little bit. So yesterday, she drove over the culvert with her lawnmower and got stuck on it. It got stuck on the culvert. She couldn't get off. She miscalculated because the grass was all grown up. She thought the culvert was over here. It wasn't, and it's just she's sitting on the culvert. She can't get off. So I got to meet her son and his wife, and they're very sweet people. They're really nice people. Yeah, really nice. Hare Krishna. But she was, while we were waiting for her son to come to help push the thing off the culvert, she was telling me about, because she's lived there like forever on that property. It used to be a farm. I guess they were farmers. But now they're selling it off, which is what's going on here. They're building urban sprawl. The 5-acre rule here, so you can only put a big house with 5 acres. But it used to be farms. So, big farms, you know, with tractors and stuff. So 5 acres, you can still have a farm, just do a little organic one, you know. But, so she was telling me the people that used to live here in this house, they had, it's only an acre, but they had, they were growing collard greens, and the whole thing was a garden. It was a house, and everything around it was a garden. And in the back, where I put the garden now, and there's a fence there, they were raising hogs, pigs, for slaughter. That's what they ate. They would raise the hogs, and then every now and then they would kill one and butcher it, and that's how they were living, off the collard greens and the hog corpses. So I have a little history of where I'm living, and I know there's a heavy energy here, and now I understand it better, what was going on here. It wasn't recent. It was at least, you know, it was at least 40 years ago. And then after they sold the property, devotees were living here. So it's in the past, but it is there. And I look around and say, oh, I see what it is. There's a heavy energy. And then she told me something. I almost passed out. She said that when they would slaughter one of the hogs, they would give her and her husband some of the meat, and they would give her and her husband the heart and the brains. She and her husband would cook it and have dinner. And I'm like, no wonder people can't understand this philosophy. You're eating pig's brains and pig's hearts and pig's feet And they eat the other parts too, the testicles. Well, that's a treat. They eat the liver. I don't know if they eat the kidneys, but they eat everything. They don't waste anything. You know, oh. So I looked at her and I was like, okay, so you like to eat those things. You're a very nice person. Very pious and respectful in dealings with others. I was in shock. You know, how can you eat? And of all animals, the pig, they eat stool and garbage. So the vultures do that. It's like being vulture. You know, vultures fighting over. If you see pictures sometimes of vultures eating roadkill, you know, pulling the intestines out, and you know, oh. So I'm praying for my poor neighbors. You know, she knows it's Krishna. The temple's across the street, down the street. You can hear the kirtans. So, poor neighbors. But, you know, I see now that's what goes on in the country when people have farms. They grow gardens, but they like to raise animals so they can eat them. Chickens, pigs, cows, sheep, goats. They kill them and eat them. I'm so slow, I don't get it, you know. But there's a new wave now of farmers who are vegetarian farmers and they're organic farming. And if they have chickens, they keep them not for the eggs and not for the breasts and wings. They keep them for eating the bugs. Because they're good at eating the bugs. They eat the ticks, they eat the flies, they eat the mosquitoes. They're good bug eaters, the chickens. And they make good pets too. They actually become quite affectionate from what I understand. Just like people keep parrots or parakeets. Oh, chicken's a bird. They become a little affectionate too. So, but that was yesterday. It was a very interesting day. Hare Krishna, to meet these different people. I had a great idea about the woman at the health food store, Julie. She's a little bit older. She's very good service attitude, wants to help everyone, eyes wide. And when I was in there the other day, she always zooms in on me. She was saying, you have to follow your path. Follow your path. Don't listen to other people. Follow your path. Which I thought was a little funny because if I listen to her, I'm listening to another person, right? So don't listen to anyone, but listen to me. But she was right. I can listen to her because that's Bhagavad Gita. The verse, what is it, 9:30 something? Or 3:5. What is the verse? She was just telling me Bhagavad Gita. So I best I could do with it. Another one that can zoom in on it. A lot of people have mystic potencies. They can zoom in, you know. The best I could do while she had me in her Zoom was just to tell her, well, you know, I chant Hare Krishna and that helps keep me, you know, balanced when I chant Hare Krishna. And she said very nicely, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So I had an idea when I realized that what she was telling me was actually good instruction, was actually Bhagavad Gita. I wish I could find that verse. Where the heck is the thing? Let me see if I can find it. To follow another's path is dangerous. It's that one. follow another's path is dangerous. Okay, it's 3:35. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So she was telling me it's far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though they may be faulty, than another's duties. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty, this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna, is better than engaging in another's duties. To follow another's path is dangerous. So she was telling me, don't follow another's path, it's dangerous, follow your path. So she was preaching to me Bhagavad Gita. This verse is really significant in another way too. My grandmother passed away early. Her life had a lot of bitterness to it. So when she passed away, my mother's mother, they found two things in her night table drawer, which are things that she kept close to her. One was a poem about unrequited love. Her husband ran away with his secretary and left her to raise my mother alone. And in the 1930s, that was a very awkward situation for the immigrants coming from the old country. So it was a very awkward situation. And there wasn't like government welfare and food stamps and stuff, it was pretty rough. So she had that poem about unrequited love. Let me see if I can find it. And a verse from Bhagavad Gita. Though April shakes out her rain-drenched hair. Okay, it's a poem by Sarah Teasdale. It's short. So she had this in her night table. When I'm dead, and over me bright April shakes out her rain-drenched hair, though you lean over me broken-hearted, I shall not care. I shall have peace, as leafy trees are peaceful when rain bends down the bough, and I shall be more silent and cold-hearted than you are now. Wow. So that was Grandma. She died broken-hearted, unrequited love. Ah, Grandma. Yeah, wow. Okay, so that was in her night table, along with this verse from Bhagavad Gita. Now, this was in the 50s. I mean, Prabhupada, where was not Prabhupada? 1950s, 1960s. He wasn't here yet. Early 50s, early 60s. Because she passed away early, So this was before. I don't know where she got it. But this was in her drawer along with that poem. It's far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though they may be faulty, than another's duties. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties. For to follow another's path is dangerous. And she had written under it, Krishna. Go, Granny, go. Go, Granny, go. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So this verse popped up again with this Julie at the health food store. Follow your own path. Follow your own path. So I made a little gift packet for Julie. I have one of these little pocket-sized Gitas. I don't like them very much because they're too small, but I had one, and it was the only one extra that I had. I'm not going to give her mine. I need it. But I had this extra little pocket Gita, and I put a little prasadam in there. I make these dehydrated fruit roll things, sweet, and put it in a little package with a note, telling her about my grandmother and, like make it real personal, and said when I saw this person, I remembered, you saying follow your path. I thought of you, and just give it a little package. So that was nice. Yesterday was a nice day. It was a really nice day. Hare Krishna, Christian, Gaspa, Haribo, yes, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So that was really great. Seeing my friend make advancement by using his gift to gab, by simply talking about Krishna in devotional service, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's devotees, and then coming in a little closer to my neighbors and giving some opportunity there, to try to share something so that they can get hopefully free from the reactions for eating abominable things like pig's brains and pig's hearts and things like that. So, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That was the kind of prasadam that was coming out of here 40 or 50 years ago. Oh God, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Like Prabhupada said, it's an emergency. We got to do something. This is an emergency. Yeah, so he said, I accepted, if I did anything wrong, I accepted too many unqualified disciples. He said, what can I do? It's an emergency. So yeah, there was more yesterday, but that was like the highlights. So my friend was talking about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and a lot of his songs are kind of like lamentation, like, oh, I wasted my life, how am I going to ever get free from, it's kind of like lamentation songs. They're beautiful. And it's not that he's just saying that. He really feels it. He's feeling it. That's why he's singing. He's missing Krishna. And he really feels like that, even though he's like, pure devotee. I mean, pure devotees feel like that. Hare Krishna. So my friend was asking, he said, so who, and we got to talk about the disciplic succession. So I said, well, Bhaktisiddhanta wasn't the disciple of, the initiated disciple, Diksha disciple of Bhaktivinoda, because he was his father. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was Bhaktisiddhanta's father. So he didn't do the formal, he obviously was a shiksha, and the mother and father, they're already naturally spiritual masters for the children, but he didn't want to do the formal diksha initiation, the formal connection of the holy name initiation, coming out of the heart and in the mouth and the ear. He didn't want to do that one. Formal thing. So he suggested Gorkishore Das Babaji to be the one that gives the holy name like that, the Diksha. So I was looking at it going, what kind of disciplic succession is this? Did Bhaktivinoda Thakur have any Diksha disciples? I don't remember any Diksha. Was Gorkishore a Diksha disciple? Was there some formal transmission? I don't think so. I want to look into it a little bit more, because this disciplic succession is not that formal like that. The formalities and the structure of it, Prabhupada's given, and Bhaktisiddhanta also have given a very solid structure. Why? Because part of the mission is a worldwide movement. And for that, there has to be organization, there has to be structure, there have to be rules, there has to be management of assets and funds and buildings and deities and temples. And if you're going to have a worldwide international organization focused on education, teaching, like a Brahminical thing. You have to have a religious culture. But the actual disciplic succession, where were the bananas in the fire? Where was the giving of the neck beads? Where was the taking of the vows? Where was all of that? It's not discussed. Apparently that was introduced, Bhaktisiddhanta introduced that kind of structuring things, setting up for a worldwide organized army. And then Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, he took it to the nth degree. He just... But what kind of disciplic succession is it? It's not so formal like that. It's a heart-to-heart transmission. It's a spiritual line. Just like chanting Hare Krishna is a sacrifice for the age, and everything else is meant to help to do that. The deities, the temples, everything is meant to support what? The chanting of the holy names. That's the sacrifice. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Everything keeps pointing to that. It all comes back to that. Everything. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Well, wait. I'm reading about the three modes of material nature. So let's read a little something. Yeah, I was, I'm fasting. This is the 5th day, just watermelon. And it's great. Love it. If I never had to eat anything again, except for maybe just some watermelon, oh, I'd be so happy. It's wonderful. And keeping a certain amount of solitude, which means you got to do with my mind. And get purified. You can really start to see what's stored up in there and not just cover it over with busy work. It's So something came up the other night, and I was having like a crisis of faith. Like, how do I know Krishna exists? Maybe it's just all stories, or maybe it doesn't even exist. Have I seen Krishna? I haven't seen Krishna. Well, there's a deity in the temple, but I mean, it looks like a marble or a brass figure there. I mean, how do I know that's actually God, an incarnation of God? How do I know? Well, we know by devotional service I can be seen. But I was exploring this, how do I know personally, me? How do I know Krishna? Why should I surrender to something or someone I can't see? Who doesn't have a material body, he's a spiritual being, and can't see Krishna. Where is he? Where's Krishna? Maybe I've been duped all these years. And Prabhupada actually made a joke. He said, even if there isn't any Krishna, isn't this a nice way to live? And then he laughed. Well, I don't think that's funny, because that doesn't help at all. How do I know this Krishna? So I asked my friend, who's so mercifully dared to stop over and enter this insane asylum over here, for a few minutes. You know you've got a dear friend when they'll do that. They came over and walked into the nut house. And so I hit them with that question, and I told them what I'd been going through. I said, so how do you know? How do you know there's actually, poor thing, you know, walks in the door to say, hi, how are you? And I'm, how do you know there's Krishna? So she repeated what she'd heard, and what she accepts is that Prabhupada gives the example, well, there's a source of everything, and we have a father, and our father had a father, and his father had a father. And when you go all the way back, the original father, that's Krishna. That's one way to understand. And so I said, oh, wow, that's pretty good, because she had to come up with it on the spur of the moment. I was right at her throat. How do you know? And, but then I came up with something else. This is what has turned it for me big time. How I know this Krishna. Not through my material senses, obviously. I know there's God, and I know there's Krishna, and I know he's a perfect person. Because the philosophy that he speaks is perfect and cannot be defeated. His Bhagavad Gita, him actually speaking Bhagavad Gita, is perfect knowledge. Who can speak like this? Who? No one. Oh, they're speaking. They get all kinds of philosophies, and maybe it's like this, and maybe it's like that, and then they argue. But who can say, like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita? So I know there's a source of Bhagavad Gita. Someone has spoken this. Someone has. It's here. It's obvious. It's right here. And it's perfect knowledge. So whoever spoke it, Hare Krishna. That's how I know this Krishna. So I was really happy with that. I was happy with that. Yeah, I like the thing about father and father and father. Yeah, that's cool too. And then the Christians use other kinds of arguments like how the universe is so complex. That complexity couldn't just happen spontaneously. There had to be a designer. You know, the, what is it? Intelligent design of the creation. Yeah, there's that too. But this is the one that put it over the top for me. That no one can speak like Krishna speaks. These are his words. And they're true for all time, all place, all circumstance. Can't be defeated. There's no way to defeat the teachings in this book, the knowledge in this book. There's no way to defeat it. Hare Krishna! There's a real character at the temple. He's a pujari, Indian body fellow, and he has a parrot, and that's really funny. He's taught the parrot to do the cat call. What a rascal that pujari is. So when you go near the bird's cage, he goes. Hare Krishna. Yeah, maybe he'll teach you to go Hare Krishna. Yeah. All right, this is chapter 14. The three modes of material nature. And Krishna is telling Arjuna that the knowledge in this chapter is superior to all the other knowledge. He says it's superior to everything he's spoken before. It's superior knowledge. So what has he spoken before? He's spoken about karma yoga. He spoke about transcendental knowledge. He spoke about action in Krishna consciousness, Sankhya Yoga, philosophical understanding, knowledge of the Absolute, attaining the Supreme, the most confidential knowledge, opulence of the Absolute, even the universal form, devotional service. He's explained the superiority of devotional service, and nature and joy in the consciousness, which is the knower, field of activity, and like that, and supersoul. But he says here, the three modes of material nature, understanding these three modes and how they affect the embodied living being is far superior to anything else he's spoken before. Who would have thought understanding goodness, passion, and ignorance could be such an important and significant aspect of transcendental knowledge? He says. So, this is text 4. Sarvayonishu kanteya murtaya sambhavantiya tasham brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. Purport. In this verse, it's clearly explained that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original Father of all living entities. Okay, so that was when I was talking to my friend. I said, how do you know? She said, well, he's the original Father. Okay. The living entities are combinations of material nature and spiritual nature. Such living entities are seen not only on this planet, but in every planet, even in the highest one where Brahma is situated. Everywhere there are living entities. Within the earth, living entities. Within water, within fire. All these appearances are due to the mother, material nature, and Krishna's seed-giving process. The purport is that the living entities, being impregnated in the material world, come out and form at the time of creation, according to their past deeds. So how Krishna impregnates the material energy is described in more detail in the Bhagavatam, I think second canto somewhere, process of creation, something like that, where I believe it's Lord Brahma talking to his son, Narada, the knowledge that he received from Krishna, the process of creation. So I was kind of joking about the old saying, which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, they like to go around in circles. Well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, if you listen to Krishna, he said the rooster came first. And the rooster came from Krishna. Krishna. Text 5. Sattvam rajastama iti guna prakriti sambhava nibadnanti mahavaho dehe dehinam avyayam. Material nature consists of the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the living entity comes into contact with nature, he becomes conditioned by these modes. Consists of. Material nature consists. I thought material nature consisted of earth, air, fire, water, and all of that. Is consists exclusive? Or is it just partially consists of? Or, well, what is consist? Consist. Composed of. Krishna. Definition of consist. Wow. You know, some of these archaic definitions really show a lot more. They're words that aren't in use, definitions and usages of the words that aren't in use anymore. I mean, it is Kali Yuga and people are speaking totally materially, but some of these words at one time had a little bit more of a transcendental ring to them. So the archaic consist means to be capable of existing. Consist. So it's not just that it's like part of it, but it's inherent to the ability for something to exist. It's inherent. It's a vital component. To exist, to be capable of existing. Consist. So it's not just made up of like some an external way, but is inherent to the actual existence of the thing. But that's the old usage. The new usage doesn't reveal that. Yeah, it doesn't show that at all. The present usage of the word is to agree, to cohere, to coincide, to conform, to correspond, dovetail, fit, harmonize. Yeah. But when you go back to the old meaning of the word, it refers to what makes something capable of existing. That's why I like to look these words up. Krishna. Material nature consists of the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. So that usage of the word consist isn't just like makes it, it's what makes it possible for the material nature to exist, is these three modes. When the living entity comes into contact with the nature, material nature, becomes conditioned by these modes. Purport. The living entity, because he is transcendental, has nothing to do with this material nature. Still, because he has become conditioned by the material world, he is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because living entities have different kinds of bodies in terms of the different aspects of nature, they are induced to act according to that nature. This is the cause of the varieties of happiness and distress. In the previous chapter, Krishna was discussing how the super soul is within all living entities, no matter what kind of body they have, and that knows what everyone's field of activity is, and the individual soul knows his own little field of activity, and the two of them are together like that. But here, now they're starting to discuss how this works, what's going on the activities, and it's going into more depth. So as Krishna says, this is more superior knowledge of how this is working, what's happening in the bodies, how the living entities are influenced when they come in contact with this material nature. Tatra sattvam nirmat latvat prakashakam ananmayam sukha sangena bhatnati jnana sangena traniga. Krishna says, O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode develop knowledge, but they become conditioned by the concept of happiness. Prabhupada's purport. The living entities conditioned by material nature are of various types. One is happy, another is very active, and another is helpless. So happy is mode of goodness, very active is mode of passion, got to get those results, and another is helpless, is overwhelmed by illusion and laziness and sleep and is practically paralyzed. All these types of psychological manifestations are causes of the entity's conditioned status in nature. Psychological manifestations. So this has to do with the mind, the condition of the mind, goodness, passion, and ignorance. How they are differently conditioned is explained in this section of Bhagavad Gita. The mode of goodness is first considered. The effect of developing the mode of goodness in the material world is that one becomes wiser than those otherwise conditioned. A man in the mode of goodness is not so much affected by material miseries, and he has a sense of advancement in material knowledge. The representative type is the Brahmin, who is supposed to be situated in the mode of goodness. This sense of happiness is due to understanding that in the mode of goodness one is more or less free from sinful reactions because of having knowledge, and not acting in a way that you get lots of sinful reactions. It's like, how to minimize all of that. That's knowledge, to minimize the sinful act in such a way that you don't get all these sinful reactions. Not even necessarily transcendental, just within the mode of goodness, like what foods to eat, what kind of work to do, what kind of religious actions to perform, like that. The pious activities, giving charity, all these things, mode of goodness. So the sinful reactions, not having to deal with it all the time. So they become happy, fat and happy, healthy, happy, prosperous. Actually, in the Vedic literature it is said that the mode of goodness means greater knowledge and a greater sense of happiness. Which ultimately leads to the heavenly planets. What could be more fun than that? Next paragraph. The difficulty is when a living entity is situated in the mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned to feel that he is advanced in knowledge. And here it comes. And is better than others. There's that pride. Okay? Advanced in knowledge, I'm successful, and I'm better than other people. Oh yeah, you better believe it. In this way, he becomes conditioned to his false ego. The best examples are scientists and philosophers. Each is very proud of his knowledge, and because they generally improve their living conditions, they feel a sort of material happiness. This sense of advanced happiness in conditioned life makes them bound by the mode of goodness in the material nature. As such, they are attracted toward working in the mode of goodness, and as long as they have an attraction for working in that way, they have to take some type of body in the modes of nature. Thus, there is no likelihood of liberation or of being transferred to the spiritual world. Repeatedly, one may become a philosopher, a scientist, a poet, and repeatedly become entangled in the same disadvantages of birth and death. But, due to the illusion of material energy, one thinks that that sort of life is pleasant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One time Prabhupada said the way to preach to someone who has some knowledge is to fall at their feet and glorify them. Oh, you're so knowledgeable. you're such a great saint, you're such a great this, a great that, poet, a scientist, you're so great. And just grovel at their feet and tell them how great they are. And then say, no, please, just forget all of this and surrender to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chant Hare Krishna. Forget all of that. Just forget it. First you get his attention. Oh, he's so great. And he's getting puffed, puffed, puffed. And then, now just forget everything. Chant Hare Krishna. Christian, she's saying something here. Let me see. Christiana says, Krishna can be experienced, felt, and seen in the heart and soul of a pure devotee, whose experiences are non-different from what has been written in the scriptures. Yes, 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 yes. Hare Krishna. What I'm finding, fortunately, more and more, is that I'm experiencing these things, and then when I read it in the scripture, it just confirms it. It's not like the messages of Godhead are foreign. They're not foreign. The more I'm chanting, the more I'm praying to be able to engage in devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering, using everything in Krishna consciousness, the more I'm practicing like that, then when I read these scriptures, it's not foreign. Because it's Krishna speaking. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Nobody can defeat this. Who can defeat this? No one. This is the most authoritative, extensive, incredible, wonderful, awesome, blissful, ecstatic, spiritual movement on the planet. Ever. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. No one can defeat this. Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Because it's by direct perception. The individuals. So Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita. Oh gosh, I need to know where these verses are. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. It's in the 4th chapter. Maybe I can find it. Krishna. There's a site here with all of Prabhupada's books on it, and there's a search function, but it's the worst search function I have ever seen. It's just terrible. Let me see. I'm going to try to find it. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna. It finds everything that you don't need. Oh, amazing. It actually found the verse. Okay, it's chapter 9, text 2, and Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavitram Idamutama Pratyaksa yagamam dharmyam sushukam kartam avyayam. And Krishna says, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It's the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it's the perfection of religion. It's everlasting and joyfully performed. It gives direct perception of the self by realization. Haribol. Krishna. Raja Vidya Rajaguyam. Pavitramina Mutamam Pratyak Sava Gamam Dharmyam Shushukam Katamavayam. So now he's going to talk about the mode of passion and then the mode of ignorance and how they affect. But I think I'm going to stop there. And take care of some things. Do the needful. Hare Krishna. Yeah, see, Christiana, you were speaking that verse. That was the verse. You were speaking that verse. 9:2. When you say, Krishna can be experienced, felt, and seen in the heart and soul of a pure devotee, whose experiences are non-different from what has been written in the scriptures. This knowledge gives direct perception of the self. There you are. Yeah. Hare Krishna. This is a spiritual survival program here. Spiritual survival. Hare Krishna.